Massachusetts. He lives in Danvers with his wife Laura and daughter Julia. He loves to watch sports and has a passion for poker. He was featured in ESPN and the Boston Globe as he was ranked very high in the World Series of Poker. Please welcome to the stage, Jonathan Broderick.
Thank you. I'll tell you what, something you said about these lights, I've lost 15 pounds. This is a great forum for exercise. So if you guys want to come up, do a little cardio before you guys head out, it'd be a good thing. So I'm actually really honored right now to be bringing up our next presenter. As you guys know, most of you received his book last year. I'm hoping the majority of you read it, and I know a lot of you have, because a lot of you have asked me questions and were inspired by his book. But I know him from way before this. We grew up together, what's it been, 20-something years? And we're old, so it's been a long time. He continues to inspire me to want more out of my life, and has helped me progress in 2014 to new levels. And I have even bigger visions in 2015. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Michael Alden.
Play some music for you guys. How's everybody doing this afternoon? Are you feeling good? Good. I tell you, I feel absolutely fantastic. What I'd like for you to do, I'm going to ask a favor of everybody real quick, if you could do this for me. I'm going to ask that same question again. I'm going to say, how's everybody doing this afternoon? And I'd like for you all, in unison, to say terrific. You think you can do that? Can everyone do that for me? Yeah. All right. How's everybody doing this afternoon? Terrific. That was fantastic. I tell you, again, I'm terrific as well, but it's early, and I'm going to get better. You know, I learned that from one of the most prolific salespeople of our time. A lot of you probably know who he is. I've had the opportunity to actually spend a lot of time with him. I've had dinner with him. I've picked his brain, so to speak, and that's Zig Ziglar. Everyone know who he is? Yeah. That's right. And you know, he taught me something. He said, Michael, anyone ever hear his tapes? He says, Michael, your attitude dictates your altitude, right? Your attitude dictates your altitude, and it's so simple. And I said to myself, hey, man, every single day, if I just wake up and I'm in a good mood and I'm happy, I wonder what my day is going to be like. Because I used to be that guy that would wake up in the morning and not be too happy about where I was at, right? You guys are door-to-door salespeople, right? It's a difficult job. I sold cars. I thought that was difficult. I think you guys have the most difficult job that's out there, right? And I'm sure you walk on lawns and people, I heard someone say they get kicked, you know, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going until they kick me off their property. But I think it's a very difficult thing. If you get nothing out of this next 3 hours, if you do that every single day, I'm telling you, it will absolutely change your life. It is the simplest thing you can absolutely do. Just tell yourself you can have a terrific day. The other interesting thing is it freaks people out, right? If someone says to you, hey, how you doing? I want people to say, I'm all right, I'm okay. This is one that most people always say, same shit, different day. I told myself I wasn't going to swear. Sorry. Right? How many times do you hear that? Same shit, different day. Guess what? It's going to be the same shit, just a different day if you think that way. And what I learned from Zig Ziglar is my attitude dictates my altitude. Here's another interesting thing that happens. Chemically within your brain, this is a scientific fact, chemically within your brain, when you tell yourself that you're going to feel better, there are actually chemicals, hormones that are released in your brain that actually make you feel better. It's a scientific fact. And when you do it for other people, they have a great day as well. So if there's anything you get out of this, the most simplest thing you can do is to change your attitude. And it's so simple. So next time someone says, well, how are you doing? You say, I feel terrific, fantastic, stupendous, whatever you want to do. And then I like to follow it up with, but I'll get better. That freaks people out a little bit too. So, you know, my real name is Mike Shuko. And people say, Mike, what's up with the Alden thing? You know, Alden Shuko. Are you afraid of your last name? You embarrass your last name? It's a Michael Anthony Shuko. It sounds a little like Goombarish, right? And I said, look, I'm not embarrassed by my last name, but if you Google Shuko, the first thing that comes up is armed robbery. The second thing that comes up is distribution of a controlled substance. And the third thing that comes up is assault and battery. And that's just my 8-year-old daughter. So, I guess I'm a little embarrassed, sure. The name of my company is called Blue Race Marketing. It's based off of a book called The Go-Getter. And in The Go-Getter, one of the characters in the book, his name is Alden Cappy Ricks. I lived on 263 Alden Street, so it just kind of made sense, you know. So that's really how we came up with the name Alden. You know, I'm sure you probably all want to know, like, how did I get here? John kind of mentioned it. John and I went to high school together. You know, we weren't like best of friends, right? Where is John? Where are you? We weren't like best of friends. We played sports together. We hung out together. Probably went to some of the same parties together in high school that we probably shouldn't have been at. Can't recall which ones, but I'm sure there were plenty. But we always kind of stayed in touch. We always had a mutual respect for each other. And about a year ago, on Facebook, we were kind of chatting back and forth. And I was talking a little bit about my book. He says, tell me a little bit about your book. So I was telling him a little bit about my book. And he said, well, what are your goals? You know, what are you trying to accomplish? I said, well, I have several goals. One of them is to release my book as a New York Times bestseller. He says, well, how do you accomplish that? Like, what do you need to do? And I said, well, you got to sell a lot of books to do that the first week. And he said, well, what can I do? I said, well, you can buy a couple copies of the book. He said, you know what, Mike, I know your story. I haven't read your book, but I'm going to do something better. I'm going to buy 200 copies of your book. I said, John, you don't need to do that. He said, you know what, Mike, knowing what I know about you and your background and where you're at today, I'm sure the book's going to be great. He bought 200 copies without even reading it. And I want to thank you for that, John. Thank you very much. And let's give him a round of applause, please, for that. I'll reimburse you someday, I promise. One of the goals, again, was to be a New York Times bestseller. I didn't know anything about selling books, by the way, let alone the fact that I even wrote a book is an extraordinary thing. But I didn't know what it really took. Now, I haven't met that goal. But the book has done some amazing things. It's been a #1 bestseller on Amazon. We've sold close to 50,000 copies. We're bestseller on USA Today, Barnes & Noble. Everything about the New York Times. I think the New York Times has something against me, probably because I'm from Boston and I swear a little bit. You know, I'm a little abrasive sometimes, people. But the interesting thing is I'm going to actually meet that goal. I might not meet it, you know, next week or the week after that. It might be 10 years from now. But mark my words, I will meet that goal. Whether it's this book or the next one, I will absolutely meet that goal. A lot of you probably don't know my background. Everyone here get a copy of my book? No. John, what happened to those 200 copies? Let me tell you a little bit about my background. I grew up in the projects of Beverly, Massachusetts. A lot of people laugh, and I bet you guys may laugh too, because you guys have been probably to the worst of the worst neighborhoods, right? And there's people who say there's no such thing as projects in Beverly, Massachusetts. Have you been to South Central LA? Have you been to the south side of Chicago? You know, even some of the projects in Boston, New York City, the Bronx, Brooklyn. Yeah, I grew up in the projects in Beverly, Massachusetts, surrounded by crime, drugs, violence. My mother's HIV positive. My stepfather died of AIDS. My father was addicted to cocaine. One of my brothers recently passed away from an overdose of heroin. Another brother was in rehab for heroin. Another brother did 2 years for distribution, so I wasn't kidding when you Google my name. Did 2 years for distribution. And kid I grew up with is in jail for life for murder. And a lot of people started asking me, say, Mike, what makes you so different? How are you able to graduate high school, go on to college, graduate law school with honors? I went to Suffolk Knights here. Can't thank them enough. Thank you. From there, I have a successful career as a lawyer. Started business in 2009, by the way. I say it was in the worst economy in the history of the world. I tell people that. I got in an argument once with the IRS about that when I owed them $187,000. Go on to, again, found a company that has been ranked in Inc. magazine for the past 2 years as one of the fastest growing companies in the United States. Be recognized by the Boston Business Journal as one of the top 40 under 40 entrepreneurs. How did that happen? Now, I don't bring that up to pat myself on the back, but I started asking myself these questions. And people said, Mike, what makes you so different? And one of the things that I realized, the interesting thing that I realized, is nothing. What happened there? Nothing went away. Nothing makes me different. If you actually look at my DNA, and you look at the DNA of the people that I grew up with and my family members, and you look at the DNA of every single human being on this planet, there are two things. There are two things that we all don't have. And the first thing is the success gene. Nobody's born with it. Now, I checked last night just to make sure, but I'm pretty sure they haven't found it. I know that they're mapping DNA. Who knows? Maybe they'll find it, right? I might have to change the presentation at some point. But there's no such thing as a success gene. And the other thing is there's no such thing as a failure gene. It doesn't exist. Still doesn't answer the question. What makes me so different? And a lot of people, they want to know. I remember what it was like growing up in the projects, not having any food in the refrigerator, having the Salvation Army subsidize Christmas, Thanksgiving, and just regular days. I remember what it was like in the wintertime when our heat was shut off, electricity was shut off. And a lot of people ask me, they said, there had to have been a certain time in your life, when things started to change for you. The other thing about me, too, I wasn't really the best kid either. I was fighting, stealing. I didn't really do anything too bad. I got arrested a couple times. One time I was on a motorcycle. It was really no big deal, but it made the front page of the paper. It was kind of cool. So what is it? And the thing that I realized, and it's so simple, and that's the best part about my book. For those of you who read my book is so simple. A lot of people read it. I love some of the reviews I get on Facebook. They say, I know that. Well, if you knew that, then why aren't you doing it, right? But the simplest thing, the thing that I found is I just think a little bit differently than other people. And people say, well, when did it happen? And I think it really started to happen when I was that kid growing up in the projects, and I wanted more out of life. I didn't want to be that kid anymore that was always struggling, that didn't have anything. And so I wanted more out of life. The biggest thing that I think that I stopped doing is I stopped making excuses. Now, there are books, there are tapes that are out there about this. I stopped making excuses. I call it excuse-tosis. And the reason why I call it that is because I believe that excuses and excuse-tosis is a disease that has infected all of us, and every person on the planet at some point is infected with it. And what it does is it kills the human spirit. And so many people get caught up in it, and they don't do anything about it. They continue to make excuses. You know why? Because they're easy, right? Excuses are easy to make. But the thing that I learned is that it's not my mom's fault, it's not my dad's fault, it's not my teacher's fault, it's not my neighbor's fault, it's not the customer's fault, it's not my manager's fault. It's my fault, so to speak, for lack of a better term. I became accountable for where I was in life at a very, very young age. And when I started to do that, that's when I think my life really, really, absolutely started to change. The other sad part about it is that excuse-tosis usually is brought upon by our family members, right? No one likes to talk about it, but I'll talk about it. It's usually our family members. People say, well, you don't want to do that. You want to be a door-to-door salesperson? What do you want to do that for? You're better than that. I remember when I sold cars. I sold cars for 3 years out of college. You say, you're a college graduate. What do you want to do selling cars? What these people were doing was they were stealing my dream, and they were making the excustosis so much easier for me. In other words, I don't need to sell cars. I'm better than that. That in and of itself is an excuse or why I wasn't going to do something. But I stopped doing that, and I became accountable for my actions. One of my favorite ones. Anyone ever see this one? I'm too young. I'm too young. I don't know enough about things. At one point, I had almost 200 employees. I think I have about 100 now. Is that about right, John? About 100. All my managers are in their 20s, and they manage people twice their age. The too young thing is ridiculous. There's no such thing as being too young. The other one, this is another one that I like. I'm too old. I went to law school with a guy who was 70 years old. His name is Mike, and I remember having a conversation with him. I said, Mike, what are you doing? He came back to me and said, Mike, he said, I set a goal. I told myself that I wanted to be a lawyer. I set a goal and I wanted to achieve it. He went to law school nights for 4 years, and then he graduated, and he continued, and he practiced law, and he's still practicing law today. There's no such thing as being too old. I mean, you must hear, people hear it all the time. Oh, I can't get the job because, they're going to discriminate against me. That's the easy one. They're going to discriminate against me, so I'm not even going to bother. I'm not even going to bother applying for that job. I'm too old. The other one, too risky. I don't want to take a risk. Nobody wants to take a risk. I saw a quote once from an insurance company, which is somewhat ironic. The quote said, the biggest risk is not taking one. The biggest risk is not taking one. We all take risks every single day. The interesting thing, when I was talking to some of the executives here about what you all do, and I don't know exactly the different types of leads that you get, because I heard someone else, the gentleman that was up earlier, talking about the different types of leads. But Comcast, what they've done is they've taken a lot of the risk away from you as salespeople. In other words, the infrastructure, okay, that's expensive. The advertising, that's expensive. The management, that's expensive. And then also, of course, the most important thing, right, the leads, that's expensive. And the biggest risk that I think you might have, I was listening to someone else talk about this earlier, is, I don't know, maybe you get some frostbite, right? On those hot days, maybe some dehydration. You might get some of that. But there is no such thing, I believe, as being too risky. This one is my favorite. Oh, by the way, I sent this to John, and I caught it real quick. You see what it says, not smart enough? I actually spelled enough wrong. That's spelled right now, right, I think? Okay. I caught that at like 11 o'clock last night. I said, John, I think I spelled not smart enough right. I graduated 187 in my class out of 250 people with a C- GPA, okay? I then went on to college, graduated law school with honors. But none of that means anything, right? One of the things I realized is that I guess I was reasonably intelligent. But when you make sales, or when you solve problems at Comcast, or when I solve problems at my company, one of the things that we don't do is we don't say, hey, what was your GPA in high school? Did you get straight A's in college? I actually have a guy on my staff. He's a Mensa. Does anyone know what that is? Right? It's like, I guess you're wicked smart. Was a good paper right here. He claims the reason why he became a Mensa because his son is also a Mensa. His name's Chris. I said, Chris, it's a really horrible thing to be a Mensa. And he said, why? I said, because you can't tell anybody, because you're going to look like a jerk, But it doesn't really matter because the Mensa thing, we solve problems all day long without being smart enough. There's no such thing. If you want to solve the problem, if you want to stop making excuses, the smart enough thing, really it's irrelevant. The thing too is, what's the thing? Not enough time. How many times do you hear that? I don't have enough time. There's not enough time in the day. And I hate to keep giving examples of me, but that's kind of what my book's about. When I was in law school, I was selling cars. And then when I went from cars, I was a recruiter, and I had to be in the office at 7 a.m. I was at the gym at 5. I was at the office at 7. I left at 4:30. I went to law school here in Boston, and the office was in Beverly. I was there till about 10 or 11, drove home and did it all over again. And in between that, I also was in the best shape of my life. Not right now, but I was then. There's no such thing as not enough time. There's 24 hours in a day. And for those of you who think that you don't have enough time, you're wrong. You're just not looking in the right places. I tell the story in my book. Excuses, again, are the easiest things to make. They make you feel better about, where you're at in life. And I was talking to one of my brothers who passed away over an overdose, and I was at my other brother's wedding. And he was studying to be an electrician. And he was getting his apprenticeship license. And I said, Dominic, what's going on with the apprenticeship license? How's that going? You making any progress? And he looks at me and he goes, Dad effed that up. I said, how did Dad F that up? He said, when I was in prison, Dad let my license lapse. When I was in prison, Dad let my license lapse. So I looked at him, I said, well, what are you going to do now? He goes, well, Dad effed it up. That's it. I'm done. It's so easy to blame, everybody. But I think about that story again. He passed away, and I don't want to get too emotional about it, but you hear it all the time. Excuses are something that I think that really kill your spirit. It takes away your drive. It takes away your motivation. Again, a lot of people who try to help you are actually hurting you. I remember when I was talking to my mother when I was a kid, I said, Ma, why is it always so difficult? Why do we not have enough food in the refrigerator? Or why was your car repossessed? And she said, Mike, well, it's the economy. We're poor. It's okay, honey. And she was just trying to do the right thing. She was trying to make me feel better. But really what was going on, when I step back and look at it, is she was making it okay to make excuses. Here's the good news. The good news is that it's curable, right? At any time. The other interesting thing is the most successful people in the world, you watch interviews, and I've had the opportunity to sit down and talk with some very, very successful people. They have seemed to have developed an immunity to excuse-tosis. And you know what it is? It's just the way they think. That's all that it is. So if you want to stop making excuses and you want to propel your life and you want to go places quickly, the first thing you need to do is you've got to stop making excuses. The second thing you need to do is be accountable for it. The third thing you need to do is recognize that excuse-tosis and excuses are going to sometimes creep up in your life. There's always an excuse. And by the way, I make excuses every single day. Every day. I mean, I can make an excuse now why I had to buy a bigger suit because I just didn't go to the gym. But it's a fact. Anyone ever see this before? Activity versus accomplishment. I don't have enough time to do things. I don't have enough time to go to that next house. I don't have enough time to do this, that, or whatever it is. What I found, and I'm talking a little bit about this in a little bit as well, is too many people have too much activity with no accomplishment, right? And by the way, I'm just like everybody else. This is the other thing about me is I think that John, I think some of the executives I was talking to before, is I'm as real as it gets. And by the way, I make excuses every single day, and I spin my wheels too, just like everybody else. I'm sitting in my office, and it's 5 o'clock, and I'm like, I didn't get anything done today, right? When you start to think about all the activity that you're doing versus the accomplishment, and you really say, well, did I actually accomplish anything today? I was busy. How many people are really busy but don't get anything done, right? I was a recruiter for a little while after selling cars. And we had to make like 250 calls a day. I love these. I was just watching Wolf of Wall Street last night, and they said, oh, you have to make 500 calls a day. I think that's physically impossible, but that's okay. We had to make like 250 calls a day, and I wasn't that good at it. I got to be honest with you. But I banged those calls out day in and day out, and I used to watch everybody else do so much better than me. And I used to try and figure out why, they were better than me. Because I had the same activity that they were doing. I was making calls. I was at my desk. I don't smoke. I wasn't getting up wasting time. I wasn't doing that stuff. I couldn't figure it out. And what I began to realize is the reason why I wasn't accomplishing anything is because I was talking to the wrong people. See, I was a technical recruiter, so I had to call like certain companies. But I was just calling the wrong companies. When I was doing some research about, again, what you guys do is, you're never going to talk to the wrong person, right? Does everyone agree with me or no? You guys disagree with me? I don't think you're ever going to talk to the wrong person. You know why? Because everybody watches TV. And now, I know things are changing. I know some people are going to disagree with me. But your accomplishment level can be much higher than most salespeople because of what you do and actually what you're selling. See, I believe that television and the medium in which I actually make my living as well is changing, obviously, but it's never going to go away. It's just going to change. And that's what's happening with you guys. You guys are selling different products. It's just going to change. But all those people still want what you're basically selling. See, what I was doing was I was just doing a lot of activity, and my accomplishment level wasn't there because I was just talking to the wrong people. Let's go here. I'm going to skip forward a little bit. We talked about being accountable. Talked about being responsible. Doesn't that book look nice? Some of the executives at Comcast said, well, can we review your presentation before? I said, I'd rather you don't, I said, okay, I'm sorry, John, for this, but this is what I'd like for you to do is tomorrow, I want you to stop going to work. Tomorrow, I want you to stop going to work. People say, hold on a second. John's like, oh my God, I can't believe I put this kid on stage. I knew he was a loose cannon. I think he was that loose. And what I mean by that is, I talk a little bit about this in the book. See, when I was selling cars, remember when I talked about how I told myself I was too good? I shouldn't be selling cars. Every morning, this is a true story, I would wake up, get dressed, shower, and I would look at the mirror and tell myself how much I hated my job. Every single day, I would sit there and say, I hate my job. And I was talking to one of the salespeople at the dealership about that, and he said to me, Mike, why? Why do you hate it so much? I said, it's just not my thing. I don't want to be here. He says, well, you're looking at it all wrong. I said, I understand. He says, you got to stop thinking about this as a place where you're going to work. You need to start thinking about this as a place where you're actually increasing value in you. And you need to do it with enthusiasm. I said, I don't understand. He goes, look, every day you come here, you're building value in you. You are learning things. See, I didn't think I knew how to sell anything. Listen, to this day, I can't even change a tire. I was in college, a quick story. I was in college and I was driving home with my little brother, he was 14 at the time, and my car broke down. I'm 22 or something, 21. I had no idea I think he was 12. I had no idea what to do. This kid gets out of the car, I don't know, you got an eraser? I said, yeah, I got an eraser. I don't know, he plugged the radiator and then we drove off. But I sold cars for 30 years and I was really good at it, but I wasn't in the very beginning because I thought of this place as a place I didn't want to be. I didn't realize that what was really happening is I was actually developing skills within me that was going to increase my net worth. A lot of people ask me, they say, Mike, how can I be like you? How can I make millions of dollars, sit on a company that's, generates millions of dollars and do what I want when I want? I said, well, the first thing you need to do, stop making excuses, right? The other thing you need to do is you need to build your net worth. I say that to people, and they look at me confused, especially, they say, well, I don't have anything. I don't have any money. I don't have a car. I can barely pay my rent. I'm eating ramen noodles every single night. I don't have a net worth. So many people think like that. And I say, you're wrong. Because every person in this room and every person on the planet has the same thing, and that's themselves. When I stopped realizing that I wasn't going to work and I was going to a place where I was learning skills, where I was building value in me, what I was doing is I was actually increasing my net worth. And as I got better, right, as I continued to grow within the company, the other interesting thing that happened is I became more valuable to the company. You see, when you build value in yourself, when you work for a company like Comcast, you become more valuable to them. And you know how I know that? Just from today. I told John right before he came, I said, man, I'm inspired. I'm inspired by what you guys do here. Just to sit here and watch you guys come up and the recognition that you guys are getting. I guess you guys are going to do some pretty amazing things after this as well. But I'm actually inspired by that. And Comcast shows you that they value you. And every day you go out there and make sales and don't make sales, and you go through the trainings that you go through. I mean, how many sales trainings you guys go? I said to John, I said, look, I'm not going to do a sales training because you guys have been through a million sales trainings, right? Objections, all that fun stuff, rebuttals, all that stuff. I still go through sales trainings because I want to build value in me every single day. I had an accountant a couple years ago and who worked for me, and at my company, at Blue Vase, every person within the company knows how to do what everyone else does. Shipping, customer service, inbound sales, outbound sales, fulfillment, studio, the whole thing. Everybody knows what everybody does. They all have to work, a couple days within every department in order to learn how the company actually operates. But my executives, they all have to know how to do it, right? And I had this new accountant whose name is Rich. I had this advertisement, which, by the way, I probably write a ton of. I should probably get some sort of discount on my talk. I'd probably write a ton of media from you guys. I guarantee I do. We'll talk about that later. But so I had this advertisement that we're running on television, and it brought in a ridiculous amount of phone calls. See, just to give you a perspective of what I do, I'm in the infomercial business. Right? I buy TV time from Comcast. And my advertisements, how they work is it's based off of the reaction that I get from my customers. I had this one advertiser who was bringing so many calls, and I was so excited. I'm like, break open the champagne, let's start thinking about estate planning and buying houses in different countries and all this other stuff. But the only problem was we couldn't close the sales. I couldn't figure out why. So I said to my executives, I said, look, I need everybody to actually get on the phone and take some sales calls, make some sales. My in-house lawyer comes to me a couple of days later. He says, Mike, have you been to Rich's office? I said, no. He said, well, I was just there, and everything's gone. I said, what do you mean? He says, all his personal effects, everything he has in there. He collected, like, antique toys. It was kind of weird, if you ask me. But he says, he said, everything's gone. Nobody said anything to anybody. So I call up Rich. I said, Rich, I leave him a message. Hey, what's going on? It's kind of weird. All your stuff is missing. Called him again. He didn't answer. I said, look, if you don't answer the phone within a half hour, just assume you're fired. Call me back an hour later. So by then, I already decided I was going to fire him. This is what he said to me. He said, Mike, I'm a CPA. I took the CPA exam. I went to college. I spent all this time. I don't make sales. That isn't what I do. I said, Rich, I didn't think I needed to explain it to you. But see, by you taking calls as an accountant versus me, the owner, versus the in-house lawyer, versus my assistant, versus someone else, you give a different perspective on what's going on. And that's why I wanted you to take calls. But I also wanted you to build value in you, because when I actually did need you to take some calls, I could count on you. All I was asking for you to do was to build a little bit of your own net worth. And the other interesting thing was, I was giving him an opportunity. We'll talk about that in a second. Another story for you. Same scenario. Except I wanted my outbound guys to take inbound calls. 2 different animals. I'm guessing you guys probably have a call. You must have a call center. All right. Completely different type of sale, right? But I just said, hey, look, I need. And by the way, these guys are straight commission, right? So I said the outbound guys. I said, I need you to go to my inbound call center and take some inbound calls for me because I just didn't have the staff at the time. Everyone did except one kid. And sorry for him, I happened to hear what he had to say. He said, what is he going to pay us? I'm not getting up from my seat until I know what he's going to pay us. I've been meditating for a year, so my temper has really been tempered, so to speak, right? So I hear this guy, right? I get out of my office. I said, get out. Just leave. Just leave. And he looked at me all confused. He's like, what's going on? I said, leave. He left. I didn't fire him. Ultimately ended up getting fired anyway. But I was just asking. I was giving him an opportunity, and I was also giving him an opportunity to build value in himself and increase his net worth. The most ironic part about that story was that all of the leads that my outbound guys get are generated from the success of my inbound advertisement. So really what I was doing was I was actually putting, food on his table and money in his bank account by creating another advertisement. But he failed to see the opportunity, and what he did was, for me, I don't know if anyone's ever seen this before. That's what we were just talking about. Keep going. Come on. Is he depleted his emotional bank account with me? Those of you who read my book here? Anybody? No? No one's read the book? All right, I'm done. The emotional bank account, I like to call it, is that intangible thing that basically what it does is it drains all of the ability of your superiors and the people that work with you to actually trust you, to think that they can count on you, right? And the problem with the emotional bank account is once you deplete it, it's virtually impossible to get things back. And what he did with me is he depleted his emotional bank account with me, and there was no possible way that regardless of what he did, that I was going to be able to have faith in him. What's next? Do more. Do more than what is expected of you. When I was 15, I forged my birth certificate. The statute of limitations is up. I forged my birth certificate to get a job at Chuck E. Cheese's. And the reason why is because I was desperate. I needed a job. I needed to make money. And the thing about it was once they realized, I worked in the kitchen, by the way, once they realized that I was a hard worker, they gave me the opportunity to learn how to make the dough. Again, I talk a little bit about this in the book. And the dough, for those of you who don't understand pizza making, is the foundation of pizza, right? It's actually a lot of pizza aficionados might argue with me, but it is really the essence of the pizza. If you have pizza with bad dough, it's just not going to be good. So Chuck E. Cheese, just like any other pizza joint, gave me the opportunity to learn how to make the dough. And it's not just water, flour, yeast. There's a whole process is involved. And usually only management would do it, because if you screw it up, if you screw up the dough, you can't make the pizzas, and just chaos ensues. At 15, I was given the opportunity to learn how to make that dough. And then at some point, I was then given the responsibility to make the dough. So it was first an opportunity to learn how to make the dough, and then I was given the responsibility to make the dough. And when I was given that responsibility, guess what didn't happen? My pay didn't change. My pay didn't change. And a lot of people say, well, hold on a second here. I'm doing more than what I was hired for. And that's not the case. At most jobs, you're hired and you learn different things and you get more responsibility. As you get that responsibility, it usually starts out first with an opportunity. What's happening? You're building your net worth, right? You're building your net worth for yourself, but you're also building value in you and for you and also for the company. I love that job, by the way. I was Chucky a couple times. It was, needless to say, it was fun. The point of what I was saying there is do more than what is expected of you, and the money will come. People always say, Mike, you know, I want to make millions just like you. Can you get, I had this guy recently say to me, can you give me some pointers, you know, on how to make money? And everyone's always concerned about making money. Hey, look, money makes the world go round. I get it. But if you do more than what is expected of you, the money will come. You know, I know there's there's got to be some believers in this room that might have seen it. If you do more than what is expected. So when you're working at Comcast, and if they ask you, I'm guessing this has to happen, if it happens in my company, it's going to happen. If they ask you to do something that you weren't hired for, think of it as an opportunity to build your net worth. A lot of times, too, where you cross over from one department to another, maybe just by circumstance, you might find that, who knows, maybe you're better suited there. But at the end of the day, do more than what is expected of you, and the money will come, okay? You guys are all salespeople. You're all pretty much commission-based, right? Yeah? All right. When I sold cars, we used to have to, in the wintertime, we had to take the snow off the cars, right? And it was straight commission. And I just get so angry at that. You know, like, why do I have to do this? You know, I'm not making any money here, you know, and what was I learning? And I stepped back, I really had to think long and hard before I say what I was about to say. And I remember when I was doing this, I was taking the snow off the cars, I sat there one day and I just learned about the product. Just sat in the car one day because there was no customers on the lot anyway. But I was just building value in me, you know. Again, for those of you who haven't read my book, because John apparently didn't give it to you guys, I talk about you enterprises. One of the most interesting things that I find as a salesperson, and this is a thing that also has changed my life, is that you are your own business, right? If you actually run your life, your personal life, and your business life here at Comcast as if it were a business, it's amazing what starts to happen. When I talked about activity versus accomplishment, you actually start to say to yourself, did I accomplish anything today? What did I get done today? Did I prepare for the day? Am I spending too much time doing this or that? When you start to run your life like a business, things really happen. And who are you accountable to? That's it. Look, you got managers here, right? And you're accountable to them, but really at the end of the day, you're accountable to yourself. Because nobody else is going to make those sales for you. I mean, I don't know, maybe you have some friends you guys want to split deals or something like that. I don't know how that works. But nobody's going to actually make the sale for you, right? You actually have to make the sale. So you're really only accountable to yourself. I'm writing a second book. Hopefully this is the slide. It'll pop up. We already talked about activity versus accomplishment. This is the reason why I brought this slide up for this is I might as well touch upon this here. Again, if you're running your life like a business, again, you start to say to yourself, what am I doing day in and day out? Does it make sense? Am I preparing? Am I actually having the right conversation with the people? Am I selling the right things? Right? And if not, as a business, you're going to fail. Right? No business is going to last if their activity they just keep spinning their wheels without accomplishing anything. And by the way, I've been a salesperson my whole life, okay? I didn't think I was until I actually wrote the book. I was selling lemonade on the streets on the hot days. I was shoveling driveways, when other kids were out there having snowball fights. I've worked in call centers. I know what it's like to go hours, even days, sometimes months without making a sale. And it hurts. But sometimes you have to step back and say, what's going on here? I mean, the one common denominator is me. Everyone else is making sales. Why am I making sales? And I can't answer the question for you, well, why? But when you step back and you look at it, and again, you become accountable for what you're doing, and you run your life like a business and say, I can't continue to do this or my business will fail, your thought process changes. See, the whole theme of a lot of the things that I'm talking about here, this is all simple stuff. You know, there's a lot of books and tapes and, you know, anyone ever hear of The Law of Success? By Napoleon Hill? Think and Grow Rich? There are a lot of books out there, including The Law of Success, which I call it my Bible, okay? There's a lot of abstract, whacked out theories in some of these books. It's just a fact. Most people can't do half of the things that they're talking about in some of these books. And so I wouldn't recommend it for a lot of people. But my book and what I'm seeing up here is so simple. I know some of you have to be saying, this guy's a joker. Like, really? Like, I know all this stuff. Well, if you know it, then you should do it, what I say to people. If you know it, you should do it. I'm writing a new book. It's called 5% More. You know, kind of goes with the other theme, ask more, get more. I was in a spin class, believe it or not. I was in a spin class with John, Miss Me and John. John was actually teaching the class. Yeah. And true story. And the teacher, it was 45 minutes. So you get to the last 5 minutes, and the teacher said something so profound, it's ridiculous. She says, these next 5 minutes are the most important 5 minutes of this entire class. What I'm going to ask of all of you in this class is I'm going to ask for 5% more effort out of you, only for 5 minutes. And she went on to explain, as we're all like, you know, half dead riding these bikes, she went on to explain the actual physiology of actually what's going on. And in these next 5 minutes, when you get off the bike, your body's going to burn more fat, you're going to burn more calories, and at the end of the day, you're really going to get more out of it. And I said, oh my, I wanted to jump off the bike, but I had to put that 5% in for the next 5 minutes and start writing. So I started writing, I started realizing, and this is what she said, anybody can do anything 5% more. Well, yeah, again, some of you can argue with me, and we'll do that later, but anybody can do anything 5% more. And it just makes so much sense because there's a lot of books and tapes and strategies out there that try and change your habits dramatically, and it never works. But anybody can do anything 5% more. I started thinking a little bit about it when I was talking to John. I'm also not a math guy, that's why I went to law school. I had John double check these, so if this is wrong, it's John's fault. I said, John, on average, again, don't worry about the numbers, you just get the point in a second. On average, you knock about 50 doors a day, 5 days a week, right? That's 250 a week, 50 weeks, assuming you guys take 2 weeks off, sick days, all that fun stuff, 12,500 doors per year. Now, if you just knocked 5% more doors, which is a half a door a day, 625 doors, assuming the triple play, I asked John, what that is. You guys make about $200 on that. I hope that's what it is, but let's assume that it is. A half a door a day. That's what you guys would net. That's just 5% more. Imagine if you just did 1 door a day, right? Does that make sense to you? Is everyone's looking at me? I feel like someone already gave this presentation a minute ago. No, it's like I used to do stand-up comedy on a side note. And I got up, I was at my daughter's, she was a Girl Scout. It was a Girl Scout dance, and they were playing the song Super Freak. She's 7 at the time, right? And all these girls that dance around, I'm looking at one of the mothers, I said, are you listening to the lyrics to this song? And all these girls just dancing around. And so I thought it was really funny, so that night, I was, again, doing stand-up, I said, I'm going to talk about that on stage. And I got up on stage, and I thought it was hysterical. And everybody was staring at me. It was mostly comics, because nobody really, it was like a Tuesday night in Salisbury. Nobody was there, right? and everybody was staring at me, and I could feel like the laser beams coming. I said, what's going on here? The host, his whole act is about the song Super Freak. He got up, he says, let me show you how it's done, kid. And, so anyway, that was just a side note. I started out with Zig Ziglar. And he's a real inspiration to me. Again, I had an opportunity to hang out with him, and I went to the 59th anniversary of his 21st birthday. That's what he called it. The 59th anniversary, he's one of the most positive people you ever met. I had a picture taken with him once, and he said, he goes, is that an old school camera? I said, what do you mean? He goes, I don't like those old school cameras because there's too many negatives. You will get all that you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want. Some of the most the most successful people in the world, the real successful people, and by the way, I've been around guys that look real successful, and they act real successful, but the whole thing is just fake, And I've been around wealthy people that don't understand what it's like to be poor. They don't understand what it's like to wake up in the morning and not have milk, for cereal. They don't understand what it's like being that kid, like I was, that stood in a separate line in elementary school, middle school, and high school because my lunch was subsidized by the state. I remember what that was like, but I also remember organizations like the YMCA, the Salvation Army, Catholic Charities, and other organizations helped my mother and helped me, get things out of life. I'm a big donor of the YMCA. When I was a kid, growing up in the projects, there was a lot of despair. Nobody's really happy. But the interesting thing about Beverly is that, you just go one way or the other and you can't actually see some other things. But my mother worked really, really hard to get me things, to show me other ways of life. And one of the things was that she was able to work with the YMCA and send me to camp every summer. I think it cost like $50, but I think it really cost more like $500 or something like that to go. So I took it upon myself, not because I feel like I had to, but because I wanted to. My company, we send kids to camp every single summer, and it changes their lives. And it changed my life. I'll tell you a story. I talk about this in the book, but I won't tell you the whole story. Actually, maybe I will, because most of you guys didn't read the book anyway. It's a true story. Before I started doing a lot with the YMCA, I told my HR manager, I said, look, I want to send kids to camp. I don't want to just donate money. I want to send kids to camp that actually lived in my neighborhood, Courtney Drive in Beverly, Massachusetts. So one Saturday, I took it upon myself because my HR manager told me, it's too much red tape, you got to donate money, you got to do all these things. Tell someone like me that it can't be done, right? So I took it upon myself to go into the neighborhood on a Saturday. Now just imagine this. It's a Saturday, I have a hat on backwards, sweaty, I got headphones on, and I'm standing on the street corner, and I see a little girl in the exact house that I grew up in, and the same exact age as my daughter. I said, that's the girl. I'm going to send her to camp. So I'm standing on the street corner, and the mother comes out. She sees me. And I walk up to her. Just imagine, again, there's this little girl out there, a guy like me, hat on backwards, I wasn't shaved, it didn't really look good. But I went up to her and I said, look, I lived here, 13 New Balt Street. And it was because of organizations like the YMCA that has enabled me to have the life that I have, and I'd like for your daughter to have the same opportunity that I had. Would you be interested? And of course, she was a little bit apprehensive. But she said, sure. I said, all right, we'll come to my office tomorrow, and we'll just fill out the paperwork. And she came in, and she said, oh my God. She's like, you're real. You just look around, I get this big flat screen TV in my office like that. She said, I've never seen a TV that big. And I said, well, yeah, of course I'm real. She said, well, it seemed a little odd, I sent her daughter to camp that summer, but the other interesting thing that happened, totally unexpected. Her name is Maria. Maria Simpson is her name. I'm sure she won't mind. She was just down on her luck living in the project. She used to work for the airlines and was laid off as a part of a lot of the layoffs that happened in the airlines, and she needed a job. And I said, hey, would you be interested in working, in my customer service department, because I actually have a need for someone like you. She graduated college. She was just down on her luck. I hired Maria, and she worked for me for like 3 years. She ended up going on to something bigger and better. But I did that because I wanted to, not because I had to. The most successful people, again, in the world, this is what they do. The people who make tons of money that don't give back, I don't care how much money they make. I don't consider them successful. I'll tell you one last story. There was a little boy years ago. He was born. He had seizures on his whole body, mostly the left side of his body. For 6 months, he was in ICU. His parents told him, the doctors told his parents not to expect anything of him because he most likely suffered brain damage. He was here in Boston Children's Hospital for 6 months. They sent him home. They said, again, don't expect anything of him. And for years, his parents divorced, and for years his mother was trying to look and see if there was anything really wrong with this kid. He was going through different therapists, and she was down on her luck. She needed to look out to organizations like the YMCA, like the Salvation Army. There's another small organization that she took advantage of that put food on her table, that provided presents on Christmas and a turkey on Thanksgiving from these organizations. And that went on all the way up until high school. And then even in college, this young boy who was told he wasn't going to be anybody ended up going to college. And his first week in college, he didn't have any money for books. And his aunt was on the board for the Lions Club, and the Lions Club gave him a scholarship for $500 so he could buy books. And that changed his life. And that person, folks, is me. And that's why I do what I do. I wrote this book. Thank you. I wrote this book, I don't think I talked about it before, for a couple different reasons, but one of the biggest reasons why I do what I do is because I truly, honestly love helping people. I said I want to be a New York Times bestseller. I said I want to help people, and then I said I want to make money. My accountant said to me, just reverse it and everything will work out. But that isn't why I did it. I want to thank all of you for having me here. I hope that you got something out of this. I want to thank John. I want to thank Comcast. And you know what? Congratulations, all of you.